Okay, so thank you everybody for joining us today for our this workshop in our Surviving to Thriving series. And today we're going to be focusing on time management, especially an acknowledgement that it's a particularly stressful time in many ways. Just really wanting to thank you all for sharing an hour of your precious time with Frances and me today. My name is Gemma Fraser, and I'm joined by my wonderful colleague, Frances Kinlock. Frances, I don't know if you want to turn your video on with a quick wave or where you're at.
Sure. Video wave. It always takes a little longer than I hope.
That's okay. And so Frances and I are part of the Railroads Counselling and Learning Strategy team at Railroads, and so we have the pleasure of working with students from sort of an emotional, psychological perspective for things that are getting in the way of success or interfering with their ability to, kind of feel well in life or in school. And then we also have the joy of working with students around how to be successful as students, so the mechanics of being a student. And I think something like time management falls so beautifully under both those realms, because it can be, it can have an emotional and psychological effect on our well-being if we're feeling like we're always crunched for time. But also there are some mechanical things that we can sometimes shift or do to help set ourselves up for success. So before we get any further, of course, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the beautiful, beautiful lands of Railroads. That they rest upon, our university rests upon the lands of Lekwungen and Kusepsum families. And I feel so privileged to be able to work and learn and play there. And, it's the place that binds us all together. No matter where in the world you're joining in from, this is the thing that we all have in common. And I'm so respectful and thankful that we have this beautiful space to call our home for our learning and our work. And I'm, of course, a little heavy-hearted that we can't be there in person at this time, but here we are. So today what we're going to do, some of you may have been with us in previous sessions, we're going to start with a bit of a check-in and a bit of grounding exercise. We hope those will be things that you can maybe take away as tools to use later on, post-session. And then we're going to shift into talking about time management and really thinking about how we can be more intentional with our time. We'll touch upon procrastination. It's a topic that's really dear to my heart, and Frances is going to lead that today, which is really great. And we're also going to be talking about self-compassion and self-care, which is actually a really important part of procrastination and managing procrastination. And then we'll do another grounding exercise and we'll check out today. So, as I said before, I hope that you'll join in and use the chat box to connect with each other, share ideas. If you have any questions, pop those in there as well. And as well, we've got a couple of polls and other questions you can feel free to write on the screen or circle in the polls and things like that. So, an example, we have a little bit of a check-in right now. So. Just grabbing the pencil at the top of the screen, top left probably of your screen. Just take a moment to check in with yourself and how you're feeling right now. Perhaps all the goofy faces aligns with how you're feeling, or maybe none of them do, and there's another word that you could share by writing on the screen or a chat in the chat box. How are you feeling today, right now, in this moment? And there's no right or wrong answers with this. We're just really just taking a moment just to acknowledge how we're feeling. Oh, quite a few people are feeling tired. Someone's a bit annoyed, frustrated. Yeah, I was feeling that this morning too, for some reason. Some people are feeling pretty quiet. Okay, great. Thank you for sharing. That was always interesting. Oh, someone's excited and someone's feeling productive. Okay, great. It's a whole range of different ways that people are feeling at this moment in time. And then the other thing we encourage you to do is just to check in with yourselves about how much stress you're feeling in this particular moment. And again, there's no right or wrong answers with this. But we're thinking on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is kind of cool as a cucumber, no stress whatsoever, and 5 is you're kind of at your max and really completely stressed out and overwhelmed. And most of us will fall somewhere within that realm. But just take a moment to check in with yourself how you're feeling. And maybe if you feel comfortable, again, just writing a number on the board, on the screen, just letting us know how you're feeling. So, and again, no right or wrongs, just an acknowledgement, just a checking in with yourself. Great. So got some 3s, 3.5. I think it's a couple of 2s. Oh, a few 1s as well. Wow, some cool as cucumber people today. That's really, really great too. Okay. So this can be just a useful tool to use for yourself as you're going through your days, just to check in with yourself. How are you feeling in that moment in terms of stress? And then just an acknowledgement if you're tending towards the sort of, 3.5, 4, certainly the 5, giving yourself a moment to say, is there something that I could be doing right now in this moment just to give myself a bit of relief and maybe move it down half a point? And certainly that's what we're hoping to maybe help you do that today. If you're on the lower end of the spectrum, where you're a 1 or a 2, fabulous. Check in with yourself and say, well, what's going on in my life right now that's making that so? What am I doing to help create that sense of, I guess, less stress than what would be comfortable? And certainly if you're ending up where you're finding you're constantly at a 4 or a 5 on the stress scale, that can be a really good indicator too. Pay attention to that. And if you're finding you're kind of hovering around that all the time, that might be a good indicator. Maybe it's time to book an appointment to come and chat with either Francis, myself, or our colleague Sarah, just to check in and see, is there something else maybe that we could do? Oh, and David says a 4, you've got an assignment due. Yeah, that usually pushes it up a little bit there, doesn't it, in that stress realm? Great. Thank you. So what I'd like to invite you to do now, I'm going to leave my video on while I go through this. So I said at the beginning and the end of each of our sessions, we like to share just a mindfulness or grounding exercise, and to help us kind of get back in our bodies, maybe help bring those stress levels down a notch or two. It gives us a chance just to really kind of ground in whatever it is, wherever we are in this moment in time. Especially if you're working and you have school and you have family to look after, our brains can get pretty tired, and they really appreciate having a break. And this can be one of those opportunities. So wherever you are right now, if you can, I'm going to just invite you to join in with me if that feels comfortable for you. Of course, I understand not everybody's in a situation where you can join in with a little bit of chair yoga. So maybe just follow along with us and maybe give it a try later. But if you are able to follow along with it and do this with me at the moment, I just encourage you just to start to take a deep breath and then release it. Now just try to sit comfortably in your chair or stand comfortably wherever you are. Maybe if possible, put your feet on the ground, flat on the ground, that sense of feeling grounded and connected. And just start to notice your breath. As you breathe in and you breathe out. And you breathe in and you breathe out. And as you start to deepen your breath and feel that cycle of breath, so precious, breathing in and breathing out. I invite you, if it feels comfortable, to either close your eyes or soften your gaze. Let's just take a moment to check in with our shoulders, where lots of us tend to keep a lot of stress. And these are just really gentle motions today, so just listen to your body. Don't overdo any of these things that we're doing today. Let's just lift our shoulders up to our ears as we breathe in and then release. And then breathe in and breathe out. One more time, and breathe in. Shoulders up to your ears, and hold it, and release. Now keep that breath cycle going. I'm going to gently give our neck just a little gentle stretch. Maybe an opportunity to spread our gaze a little bit further as well. So breathing in and out. And breathe in and gently turn our neck to the left, our head to the left. And spread your gaze a little bit further than your screen. Breathe in and out. And in and out as we return to center. Breathe in to the other side. Breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. And return to center. Now one more thing we're going to do together. As we breathe in, just bring your arms above your head. Your palms kiss together. And as we breathe out, bring them in front of our chest. And breathe in, palms kiss together. And breathe out. Last one, all together, breathing in, palms kiss together, and breathe out. Thank you. So I hope you're able to join in with me there. If you weren't, I hope you take that away with you. Maybe give that a try sometime. I appreciate this because it helps bring my anxiety and stress levels about presenting today right down, and I feel in a much more nicely calm space. So thank you for allowing me that moment to feel like time actually does something beautiful. I feel like I'm not quite so rushed when I do a grounding exercise like this. So thank you. It helps our brain function and think and process more clearly. So thank you for that. So let's dive in with a poll now and start to orient ourselves to this idea of time management. Francis and I are curious about what are you finding most challenging about managing your time right now during COVID, during the fall season, during whether you started school, partway through school, ending your program, but what are you finding most challenging? And we've got some ideas here. You can grab a pencil and maybe circle one of these that represents or aligns with what you're feeling stressful, or chat in the chat box if something we've missed. But with time and too many video conferences, meetings, classes in your schedule, or maybe it's a challenge of working on the computer all day and then trying to get yourself geared up to study online at the end of the day or at some point during the day. Are you one of the students who's having trouble keeping up with all of the readings and all of the assignments? Are you finding time taking care of yourself and those that you love, being on time you do work and school? Having trouble with that. So yeah, this is interesting. So working on the computer, a few people are finding that really tough, keeping up with all the assignments, taking care of yourselves. Yeah. And these are things that we hear from students quite regularly. Oh, Nima, thank you too. The time zone differences. Yeah, that's a great one that we didn't think to include on here. It becomes challenging for sure. Showing up for class, doing teamwork, etc. Very challenging. And these are things that we hear from students quite regularly in our one-to-one sessions that we have with them. And so as part of this is just to remind you that you're not alone. If you're struggling with time management and any of these factors around time, you're not alone. And there are supports, and we're here to help guide you through. If this is something that you're struggling with, don't be shy about reaching out to connect with us on a more personal level, and we'll schedule some time to work one-on-one with you if that's helpful. So I think one of the reasons why we struggle with time so much is because we sometimes forget that time is actually a finite thing in a week, the way that in the Western world we construct time. I'm going to put this slide up here. So 1 week equals 168 hours. And usually when I have this conversation with students, I get quite a disparity of how people respond to that. One is like, oh my gosh, 168 hours, that's so many hours, woohoo. And then on the other end, as they start to think about like, oh my gosh, only 168 hours, that's not enough time. And the reality is, well, that just is. That's how many hours we have. So as we're talking about time management, I wish I could remember who said this or where I read this, but the whole idea of time management is, in many ways, we can't really manage time. The thing we can manage, though, is how we can manage ourselves, and we can manage how we use our time, and we can manage how we show up in different moments throughout our day. So as we talk about time management today, it's really about this sort of this showing up, this intentionality, rather than this is the specific time management tool that we would recommend that you use, because there's a myriad of tools that you can use. But really, we want to be talking about how are you going to manage yourself with the time that each of us has. Because as we start to draw some awareness to this, how much time we have, and we take out time for sleep, we take out time for eating, we take out, time for bathing and work and transporting ourselves from places, it can really narrow it down to how much time there is for work and then how much time is left for school. So this sometimes can be a bit daunting for people as they realize, wow, there just seriously does not feel like there's enough hours in the week for everything that you need to put in. And that's okay. It can be a bit confronting at first, but it can be a good time to sort of have a bit of a reality check. And are there some things that maybe we need to start to let go of, or maybe push off into the distance, or maybe minimize some things or shorten the time we do. So one of the things we encourage people to do is really look at the week ahead and start to plan out all the important things that you have to do in the week. I'm a big advocate for paper agendas and calendars on the wall. Our brains process information very differently when we see it in that sort of tactile way, and if we write things down, than they are on a phone or a computer calendar. Having said that, I know I sound like a dinosaur to many people when I have that conversation. So if it works for you on your phone, that's great. And please continue to do what works well. But if you're struggling with time management, you haven't tried old school, that can be something that's quite helpful for many people. As you map out your week ahead, you can check then, is there anything missing? Have you forgotten to put anything in? Have you recorded when your due dates for all of your assignments are? And when you've recorded them, have you maybe put in there when do you need to start working on them, so it doesn't like shock you when you realize you have an assignment due tomorrow? Have you actually backtracked your time? I put in there, are you aligning with your values and your priorities, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment. Because when we know what our values are, we know what our priorities are, then we're more able to make some of those tougher decisions that we're faced with about what we devote our time to and what we let go. And as we map out the week ahead, we can look at that and we can say, okay, what needs to be tweaked? Is there just some things need to be shortened? Do I need more time for certain things than others? So really thinking about looking ahead at the plan. So, as I said just before, we're really not talking about this as a specific time management tool for you as a student to use, although if you do schedule appointments with us, we certainly have some ideas around that and would love to work with you around what might work best for you. We're all so individual with this. But the thing we wanted to talk about is that we know that people who tend to be more successful, because successful can be defined in many different ways, but people who are successful in actually accomplishing their goals and getting through all the things they have to do often think of time not so much in minutes and hours, but they think in terms of values and priorities. And then when they know what their values and priorities are, they set up routines and structures to support meeting those values and priorities. And so it's really about setting up routines to make sure you're giving yourself the best chance to do the things that are most important to you. And this can be a bit of a shift, and I know at the moment we're feeling so overwhelmed and we feel like we're just running to catch up. This can be a bit of a stretch to slow down and think about what your values and priorities might be. So I'm really acknowledging that can be difficult work to do when you're feeling really scrambly. But maybe just together for this next 40 minutes or so, we can just maybe tap into a little bit of this. So there are 3 areas to consider when you're setting your goals and identifying your priorities. And they might be your career, your relationships, and something for yourself. And my wonderful colleague, Sarah Chattelborough, shared many moons ago this TED Talk from Laura Vanderkam, where Laura Vanderkam talks about this idea of language and the importance of language around the comparison of I don't have time versus it's not a priority right now. And I really like that idea of reminding ourselves that firstly that language is really important, and language, the stories we're telling ourselves and the stories that that get reinforced by the language that we use. But also this acknowledgement that just because we can't do something right now because it's not a priority right now doesn't mean we're saying no to it forever. So if you have a spare few minutes and are interested, there's an interesting TED Talk worth listening to, I think, watching. And also, if you find yourself constantly saying, I don't have time, I don't have time, I don't have time, maybe just play around with that a little bit and check out if that's actually accurate. Might be. But is there another way that you can frame it? It's not a priority right now. This also works really well with money too. When people say, I can't afford that, something shifts when we say, that's not a priority for my spending right now. So kind of neat thing to use. So I've been doing a lot of talking, but I'd love to pass it over to you for you to just check in with yourselves a little bit, and maybe if you're feeling game to share it in the chat box, or you can write on the screen if it's a simple word. Where does your sense of purpose come from? What are the things that motivate you and drive you? What are the things that help you get up each day? And this can, for some people, it's really big, sort of, changing the world type things. Or for others, it's really small, and it's like, it's your kids. That's a picture of my daughter from a hike we went on a couple of years ago, and she and my son are 2 of the reasons that I have a sense of purpose in life, and I get up every day for that. Another sense of purpose for me is the work that I do, and I feel so lucky that I feel a sense of purpose in connecting with students and supporting students. And that's where my sense of purpose comes from, much of it. So I'm curious for you folks, like what's your sense of purpose comes from? And I'm going to grab a sip of water while I give you a chance to type in. Great. Some others are aligned with family, helping people, making a difference. Coffee gives a sense of purpose. That's great. I'm a tea drinker, so I actually I appreciate you wrote that on there, because I feel that's a sense of purpose in the morning to get up for my cup of tea. And helping someone every day. Wow, I like that. Great, that sense of something else. Someone else to focus on. Great, recovering from brain injury like a champion. Yes. Wonderful. It's certainly something worth celebrating and finding a sense of purpose. One of the other things too, I guess I'm curious about, for students to choose to go to school, usually there's a reason for that, and that can be helpful to check in as well about what was the purpose of you choosing this journey, choosing to come back to school. And if you can tap into that and remember that, that can sometimes be really helpful when we're moving through our time, through our day or our week, and we're feeling overwhelmed and that there's not enough time, or maybe our phone and scrolling through social media is taking too much time. That's something we're feeling kind of bad about or frustrated with ourselves about. Maybe we could tap back into, okay, well, what is your purpose? Like, why did you choose to come to school? And can we use that to motivate ourselves to actually do the things that are moving us towards that goal? Great, so we've got someone else to share that their faith and hope is what their sense of purpose comes from, and learning and growing. Lovely. So there's all sorts of things. We all have different things that get us up and help keep us motivated. And we can tap into that and think about, well, why am I doing the things that I'm doing? And are the things that I'm choosing to do with my time aligning with your sense of purpose? That can be helpful. I'll give you one quick story about my own life. I don't watch a lot of TV, but I and I've shared this story a couple of times with other folks, but I have, over 3 years, I've found a couple of shows that my 2 kids and I can all enjoy together. So Doctor Who being one for a few years back. So I just love watching Doctor Who on TV. Why? Because it's a connect point for me and my family. And family is such an important sense of purpose for me that that feels like a good use of my time to watch, you know, a couple of hours of Doctor Who. And more recently, it's been the Great British Bake Off, because that's a connect point for my daughter and I. So, you know, watching TV doesn't really align with most of my things that I want to accomplish in life, but from time to time, it really does. So that feels like it's aligning with my sense of purpose. So that's a way we can use that to help us decide what to do. So I want to just talk about schoolwork and time management, because obviously you folks are all, you know, your lives are all going to be different, but the one thing that you all have in common is that you're studying. And you know, when we put school into the mix, sometimes it can be a bit of a stretch, and perhaps we not necessarily realizing how much of a stretch that can be when we think about putting, you know, an extra 15 hours or 20 hours into schoolwork on top of all the things that we already had in our lives. It can be a bit tricky and a bit stretching. So here are some of the things that we know are best practices for schoolwork. And again, if you're really struggling to get your work done and really struggling to get on top of your schoolwork, it can be, you know, a good time to maybe book an appointment to come and chat with one of us to see if we can help set you up, help you get set up for success. Sometimes students, a lot of times students kind of stumble their way to success if they haven't been in school for a while, and sometimes we can help short circuit that a little bit by saying, okay, let's look at what you're doing and other ways we can tweak that. But here's some tips for you to maybe reflect on and see whether there's some tools here that you might be able to think about. So what time of day do you tend to do your best work? Are you a morning person? I mean, is there a way that you can maybe get up a little bit earlier to do your schoolwork before you head off to the rest of the day? Or are you a night owl? You know, are you better off just waiting until nighttime? But when do you do your best work? And obviously that's not always possible to have the sweet spot of time to do your schoolwork, but have you spent any time reflecting on that and trying to organize your schedule to give you the best chance of success? Have you considered who you will be accountable to? This is a really important piece, especially if you tend towards procrastination around schoolwork. Having some accountability set in is one of the most useful tools we have at our disposal for combating or dealing with procrastination. So maybe think about that. Who are you telling that you're going to get an assignment done on time by? And can you maybe give yourself a bit of a reward when you've done that as well? I know the next point, where do you tend to be most productive, is a little bit of a trickier one now that we're in this this time of COVID, but is there a place where you tend to be more productive, and are you doing your schoolwork there? Is there a particular way that you need to structure your space? Do you need to close your door? Do you need to tell your family that you just need this next hour or two for school, and if the door's closed, please don't interrupt? Like, is there a way that you can create a productive space for yourself? And that can be difficult, but even just drawing some awareness to it can be helpful. So, sorry, I'm just thinking this is one of the most common conversations I think I have with students, is this idea that before you sit down to do your schoolwork, you really should know exactly what it is that you're going to do before you start going, you know, I'm going to do school for the next 2 hours. Okay, before the 2 hours starts, you should really know what it is that you're going to achieve in that 2 hours. Set yourself up for success and set yourself up for really diving into it so that there are less distractions along the way to getting the work done. I've written up there, try the Pomodoro technique. I'm not sure if you've heard of this before. Some people do it sort of innately, even though they didn't know it's named something. But really, it's this idea of setting a timer for yourself with an acknowledgement that most of us can concentrate for a maximum of about 25 to 35 minutes at a time. So you set a timer for yourself for 25 or 35 minutes. And before you start, know what you're going to do, what you're going to spend your time focusing on. And then when the timer goes off, You give yourself a 5-minute break, stretch, grab some water, look out the window, move around, and then come back to it and set another timer for another Pomodoro. The trick is to just draw your attention back to the task at hand, because usually after about 5 or 10 minutes, most of us will find our mind will drift, and you just remind yourself it's just for 25 minutes. Just got to focus on this task for 25 minutes, and then you can release that for 5 minutes. So it can be a really powerful tool if you have an assignment that you've got some deadlines to do. Think about that. And then also there's some narrative work that we think about when we think about time and schoolwork, especially as consideration about and reflecting on, checking in with yourself about what are you telling yourself about the work that you need to do, and do you need to shift your narrative? And started to talk a little bit about that with, I don't have time rather than it's not a priority. That's starting to sort of shift our narrative. But there are other ways we can do that too. We can talk about, trying to tap into our excitement or our love of learning. I get to learn about this rather than I have to write this assignment. I get to explore this new thing that I haven't learned about before. I get to show my instructor all these wonderful resources I've been checking into. So just checking with yourself, do you need to shift your narrative at all? And then lastly, this idea of minimizing distractions. It seems so obvious, but I know many, many, many of us struggle with this. So can't emphasize this enough for your schoolwork, turning off your phone, putting in a drawer, putting in another room, whatever you need to do to minimize your distractions can be really important in helping you sort of recover your time and so I think that's probably a great point for me to hand over to Frances.
Great.
Yeah. Okay with you, Frances? So I hand over to you?
Great.
Yep. Okay.
Thanks
Great.
so much. I was really soaking it in there, learning a few more things. So next week, my talk centers around self-care and screen time. But obviously, these times call for us talking about screen time probably every at every session, because it seems to be so prevalent in our COVID lives. So I'll speak kind of more in-depthly about screen time next week, but my top tips in terms of time management with screen time is to use the screen wisely, which is easier said than done. But screens have a way of turning our brains off and onto autopilot. So when we're toggling between all of our tabs and emails and notifications, we can spend a lot of time not getting a lot done. So we'll try to be mindful when we're using our screens and ask ourselves, is this useful and productive content? Is this a useful and productive use of my time? Is this nutritional content? Is this going to actually make learning or me feel better? And I think, as Gemma just mentioned, make use of apps to set time limits and mute things like notifications that are distractions on our time. And the second tip this week to get you started with better screen time is to schedule time away from screens. And again, easier said than done these days when a lot of our lives have just, the mandate is to be online for work and play. But that makes it kind of very important to schedule in time away from our screens. And, a top tip of, screen time is nature time, going for a noonday walk, or just getting outside for a brief 5 minutes. A lot of research has shown has an amazing restorative effects on us. So just by that act of going outside, either for the walk or the 5-minute mindfulness moment, you're standing up and moving, which is of course beneficial to our bodies if we're sitting all day at the screen. And these short breaks, there is research they prove that we become more engaged when we return back to our work. And we're obviously getting fresh air at that point, vitamin D, and natural imagery actually, you know, when our brains aren't really listing or organized in the way that sometimes they are at our screens, we're actually calming our sympathetic nervous system by just kind of taking in the natural world around us. So try to schedule time away from within your calendar each week. So top tips for managing procrastination. This is a really, really big topic in our office, and something that everybody actually probably is guilty of at one point or another. Procrastination is simply the act of delaying or putting off tasks until the last minute, or even past the last minute sometimes. So no matter how well organized and committed we are, sometimes we fritter away hours on the screen or doing everything but our assignment and our projects. And in most cases, procrastination really isn't a serious problem. We call it procrastination with a small c, with a small p. It's a common tendency. So I just want to normalize it for you. At points in our lives, we all suffer with it. But when it becomes procrastination with a big P, that tends to align with certain other things that maybe you should be getting help with, like depression. So that would be a time, if you really are feeling that it's dysfunctional, to come and see us in the office. One of the biggest factors contributing to procrastination is the notion that we have to feel inspired or motivated to work on a particular task. And the reality is, if we wait until we feel inspired, we might be waiting a long time. So that's one to kind of really talk yourself through. There's no time like right now, usually. So, and it ends up causing us so much stress. It causes us distress at the best of times. So reasons that we do it: we overestimate how much time we have to perform the task. We overestimate how motivated we will be in the future. We underestimate how long certain activities will take. And we mistakenly assume that we need to be in the right frame of mind, as I said before. So we tend to fall into two types: active or passive procrastinators. A passive procrastinator delays the task because they have trouble making decisions and acting on them. And active procrastinators delay the task purposely for various reasons. And there's other types or ways to see yourself as a procrastinator, which I find sometimes helpful to help students kind of identify what might be the motivation behind the procrastination. So are you a perfectionist? Are you putting off tasks out of fear that they're not going to be good enough and not do them perfectly? That really puts people off. Are you a dreamer? Do you put off tasks because you're not really paying attention to the details? Are you a defier? Are you resistant? Does it feel wrong to you when someone dictates how you should schedule your time? This is a tough one for students at the beginning of their scholastic careers. Are you a worrier? Are you feeling fearful of doing the work or leaving the comfort zone of what you do know how to do and stretching yourself? People love working under pressure. They might need the right kind of crisis feeling. And there's a lot of us that are overdoers and they take on too much. So how do you coordinate everything that you have on your plate? So how have you guys tackled procrastination? What have you found helps? Has anybody got some top tips to share in the chat box or on the slide? Rewards such as hot chocolate, yum. Yeah, changing the location of where you work, yeah. That's a good one, Sarah. Thank you. Reward is a nice yeah, way to move through. So here's some suggestions. Oh, to-do list. Yeah, I think that might be one of these ones down here, Andrew. Thank you. Time blocking. Yeah. That's good. Scheduling your time. I like that. That's kind of along what Gemma was saying too. Self-bribery. Yeah. I'm it's kind of conjuring up angel and devils on my shoulders there. Here's some suggestions, and yeah, the 5-minute plan, the Pomodoro technique that we mentioned earlier, which is kind of setting a timer, and you remember those tomato timers back in the day, and setting it for 25 minutes, 45 minutes, and seeing how much work that you can get done within that time. Taking a break, a 5 or 10 minute break in between each segment of time. Write down the deadlines and keep them in view. Yeah, some people employ like whiteboards in their house, and yeah, having an understanding so you don't let time get away with you. Start an I did list, which is kind of like a to-do list, but it has a kind of a rewarding feeling to it, because you can let yourself know at the end of the day what you did accomplish, and then it also clarifies what then you need to do tomorrow. Ask for support from an accountability buddy. Yeah, if this is something that you really struggle with, it's nice to check in. I'm sure there's people in your class that might really want the same support. So yeah, reach out, let people know. Surround yourself with doers. Yeah, the people that kind of inspire us because they're action-oriented and task-oriented. Break tasks down into teeny tiny pieces. Yeah, seeing things, elements of your assignment in micro pieces rather than the assignment as a whole. It can be really thrilling to just tackle small bits of research at a time, or small bits of one paragraph at a time. Get in the driver's seat of your own learning. Yeah, feel the autonomy and agency that you have. That it's your choice to do these things, and especially for those people that feel highly resistant to other people's deadlines. Look at the macro view, that this is the program that you actually are choosing to be in. Reward yourself if you finish early. Yeah, I think Sarah kind of was letting us in on some of the rewards earlier. And then practice self-compassion. So try not to berate yourself when you don't get it right. Try to coach yourself through with a really loving voice. I think that's my next slide. Self-compassion is accepting what we are going through is painful, and in response, we embrace ourselves with kindness and care. So yeah, it's not about making things pain-free. This scholastic journey that you're on is full of growth stress, and that's to be understood. But when we are feeling stressed, or maybe we're caught in a procrastination cycle, think of how you would talk to your friend in that situation, and try to calm that critical inner voice and use a self-soothing voice or self-soothing practices to motivate yourself, like offering yourself a nice warm cup of tea, and treating yourself really kindly in those moments to help deactivate the stress and put yourself back on track. I highly, highly recommend checking out Dr. Kristen Nett's website. It's called selfcompassion.org, and there's many tools and tricks and things that she offers out there to really help us learn to be better coaches and kinder to ourselves.
Frances, can I jump in there just for a second?
Of course.
Yeah, I was just thinking about an interesting thing that I've recently learnt about procrastination, and thinking about, the whole idea about compassion, just acknowledgement that what we're going through is painful. And from a neuroscience perspective, they've actually done some studies on people's brains who are procrastinating over a task. And what they found is that the part of the brain that fires when we're procrastinating on a task is actually the pain receptor part of our brain. So it's actually our brain is telling us that the thing we're going to that we're stopping ourselves from doing, is actually going to be painful to do. It's like it literally lights up in the brain imagery. So I've thought about that from then. I think that this idea of the self-compassion when we're procrastinating over something is so much more important when we understand that it's our brain is telling us something. It's probably not giving us a good, helpful message, but it's real. Like, we actually feel that. Our brain actually feels that. So this idea of being kind to ourselves in the moment is so important to help us move through it.
Yeah, thank you. That's so interesting. It's true. We can, deactivate that area of our brain by being more kind. It's so self-care is a strange term now that's very used, and we sometimes feel wary of giving ourselves, again, being kind to ourselves in this way, and we feel like it's kind of a treat. But self-care is not, it's something preventative and, again, a source of renewal for us in times of stress. And I just think of it really as the routine to recharge my battery. So we get run down all the time while we're doing our programs. And how are you going to recharge so that you're ready for the next task at hand? It's not pedicures and spa days. It's a systematic discipline, and it has to be deliberate and authentic to us. So it's also idiosyncratic, and I'll kind of be talking a little bit more about self-care in greater detail at next week's talk, and how to make these routines. But how can we connect to recharge in every area of our life, or areas that are important to you, or seeing kind of depletion? So physically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, relationally, professionally, there's many areas that require this thought, this conscientious thought. Good places to start are where our parents might like us to start, with the regular exercise, healthy diet, good sleep, hygiene, nice connection points with friends and family, an activity or a hobby that you enjoy, spiritual practices, and professional enrichment. So those would all be like places to think about beginning with, that might need a tweak or two. And self-soothing, how do we add self-soothing activities to our day to really clear away negative or activating feelings and calm our brains, calm the amygdala, the nervous system. And these self-soothing activities, if you can incorporate kind of right-brained activities within your self-care routine, things like imagery, vibration, sight, sounds, touch, all the things that your five senses enjoy, you'll make great progress in that battery charging. And again, these are soothing to you. So what might not be soothing to me, I'm not a big music person, but everyone in my family really is. So I like quiet, and that's how I recharge. But I can tell, my kids just yeah, love to blast some music at the end of the day and whatnot. So yeah, we'll discuss kind of how to fine tune these things next week. So maybe, yeah, a good way to end here is just to talk about what's maybe a small act that you can commit to this week to show some kindness and care to yourself. That's a good starting place for a little micro progress. Feel free to share in the chat if you feel safe to do so. You know, there's often a little delay with people. I like to commit to a dog walk at noon. That's a real refreshing kind of moment in my day, and it helps me recharge for the afternoon. Going for a walk at the end of the day, yeah, that's a nice one too. Really separates our work day from our home life sometimes. A nap, yeah, especially those power naps. If you're able to do those 10, 20-minute ones, excellent ways. Cup of tea throughout the day, yes, warm beverage is a tried and tested and true. Exercise, yeah, getting creative with how to exercise in COVID is really an interesting chat that I've been having with a lot of students who really need to, yeah, dance is wonderful. It's got a lot of movement, imagery, there's lots music. Eating lunch outside away from my desk, yeah, that's perfect. Taking that time away and listening to music, yeah. Good stuff. And making it really purposeful, not as an add-on, but something that is there, yeah, to recharge. So this is the final slide, and it's just to end on another grounding exercise to take us into our afternoons, hopefully feeling nurtured and centered in our day. So let's begin by placing our hand on our heart, and you can even put two hands on your heart if you feel like it, but hand on your heart, and breathe gently and deeply into your heart center. As you breathe in a sense of goodness, and safety, and trust. Breathe in acceptance and ease. Breathe in a sense of calm and peace to your heart. Breathe in a sense of contentment, a sense of well-being, a sense of kindness to yourself. A sense of gratitude for others. And keep breathing, thinking about self-love, self-care. Once that feels kind of steady, let's call to mind a moment of being somebody who loves you unconditionally. Might be a moment with a partner or a child or a parent. Might be a dear friend or a teacher. It could be the Dalai Lama. It could be your grandma. And it especially could be a pet, a special cat or dog. They work really well. And as you remember feeling safe and loved with this person or animal. Sense in your body positive feelings and sensations that come up with that memory. Really savor this feeling of warmth and safety and trust and love in your body. Take a moment to allow the feeling to become really steady in your body. And when that feeling is steady, let go of the image and just bathe in the feeling. So we've got three last minutes, and we've got time management on our mind, so we don't want you to be late today. But how are you feeling now? Maybe you'd like to check in and circle. Let us know where you're. Maybe we've taken you down a notch or a 0.5 from where you were feeling on your scale of 1 to 5. I'm feeling pretty happy. I'm going to circle happy. Nice. Quiet. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Reassured. I like that. That's great. Super. So we're seeing a few lower numbers. That's great. Oh, thanks, David. Better than a power nap. I like hearing how calming and soothing I am from people other than my kids. It's nice to know I can do that. Calm. That's great. Wonderful. So this is us, and we are here to help. So if there's stuff that came up for you today and you want to talk to us, this is where we can be reached. There's no one in the office to answer the calls right now, but there's a voicemail and we answer it frequently. And that counseling email you can get directly at us, or you can book online, right, individually with all of us when you can see our calendars up there. Thanks so much for joining us today. Gemma, do you have any final words?
No, I'm just so appreciative. I feel yeah, just really thankful and honored that so many students showed up today to spend this time with us, and just really appreciate facilitating with you, Frances. You always do such a beautiful job, so thank you for being my buddy here today. And yeah, I just hope everybody will enjoy the rest of the day wherever it takes you. And yeah, as Frances said, don't be shy about reaching out if we can support you in your journey. So thank you.
Take care, everybody.